This lesson is going to cover an introduction to Motion and its windows. The first time you start Motion, this is the screen you're going to see first, and you have 4 options here. The first 2 options take you online, and you can either view a quick tour of Motion or you can follow an online tutorial. The third option will bring up the templates window, so you can pick one of Motion's templates and start there. And the fourth option is you can start a new project, and that's what we're going to choose. If you don't want to see this screen anymore, just turn it off at the bottom, and next time it won't appear. And I'm going to click Continue. So now I've told Motion I want to start with a project, it's asking me what type of project do I want to work with. If I click on where it says presets, you can see there's lots of different presets I could work with, working from fairly low quality and multimedia type sizes through your broadcast sizes up to high def, XD cam, and you can even create your own. There's a custom setting at the bottom. The one I'm looking for is PAL DV. Once you've decided what sort of project you want to work with, you can set it as default just by clicking on Set as Default on the right hand side, which I'm going to do. Once you've done this, you can click at the bottom where it says Create New Documents using the default preset, and now you won't have to come into this dialog box anymore, because every time you go up to the File menu and choose New Project, it will be DVPAL until you tell it not to be. And I'm going to click OK. This is the default setup you see in Motion. If you've moved some of your windows around and you want to get back to the default settings, just go up to the menu, Window, Layouts, Standard. There are 2 main parts to the Motion interface. The left-hand side is the utility pane. I usually call this the inspector by mistake, and it has 3 main tabs: File Browser, Library and Inspector. And the right-hand side is your canvas area. There are 2 other windows you might see, or as Motion calls them, panes, and one way to get to them is to go up to the Window menu and look for Show Project Pane. And the other one to look for is Show Timing Pane. So the project pane is like a layers window, very similar to Photoshop. The timing pane is a traditional timeline that you might use to retime things. And the shortcuts for these 2 windows are F5 and F6. So F5 closes down the project pane, and F6 closes down the timing pane. Now moving back over to the inspector area, you can see it's on the first tab, which is File Browser. Now the File Browser is not like your traditional type project window where you would import in your media and then you could view them. The File Browser is OS X, so when I click on Macintosh hard disk, what I'm seeing here are things like my application folder and my documentation and documents, basically my whole hard disk. So when I click on, for example, the desktop here, it's showing me what's on the desktop. I have 2 folders, one called Tutorial Files and one called Folder to Delete. Now the thing about this is one of the very few programs that you can actually do something very destructive. So if I just hide Motion with Apple H, you can see there are the 2 folders on my desktop, Tutorial Files and Folder to Delete. So if I go back to Motion with Apple Tab, and click on Folder to Delete and hit my backspace button, nothing happens. But if I hold Apple backspace, it throws it in the trash. And if I go to my trash can, you'll see the folders in there, Folder to Delete. If I go to my desktop, Apple H to hide Motion again, you can see that that folder has now gone and is in the trash. So be careful of deleting anything you see in the file browser. It is a destructive window. There is a reason for this. Traditionally, you would import in lots of different files to have a look at them, work out which ones you want to use. Well, in Motion, you don't have to do that. You can just bring them up in this window and look at them before you import them in, and it's a lot quicker to work. But of course, if you delete something, you delete it from your hard drive. It might be a good idea not to delete anything from this window until you've been using Motion for a little while. But this is the heads-up display. It used to be called the dashboard in version 1 and 2, but they've renamed it. And I'm just going to put it down here out of the way. So working across these tabs, again, the first one is your file browser, so that is your OS X. The second one is the library. Just move this divider bar down a little bit. Now the library is the content that ships with Motion 3, and there is a lot of it. So you can see in here you've got behaviors, filters, some generators, particle emitters, shapes, and there's lots in here. You can also access your photos folder and your iTunes from within here as well. The third tab along is your inspector, and then you can see at the bottom there are 4 tabs. The first 3 are always there: properties, behaviors, and filters. The fourth one changes, it's contextual. So to show you this, I'm going to move over to the right hand side and I'm going to go up to this button here, which is the rectangular tool, and the shortcut is R. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to draw something. Just before I draw, notice that the heads-up display has now changed because this is contextual as well. Because I've gone to this tool, it's now showing me the properties for the tool. And all I'm going to do is click on screen and drag and draw a rectangle. If you look to the heads-up display, you can see it's set to fill with no outline in white, and this is what has been drawn on screen. If you look back to your inspector and the third tab along, you can see here that the fourth tab says shape now. So properties, behaviors, and filters will always be there, and the last one will change depending on what's selected. So if I come up to the top and select the text tool, which is this one here, shortcut T, and click on screen and type something in, motion, and then click escape on my keypad, you can see now that that fourth tab has now changed to text. Also, this fourth tab is subdivided. In this case, for the text, it moves between format, style, and the layout. If I click back on this shape, you can see that the fourth tab, shape, only has 2 in this case, style and geometry. If I hit F5 to open up my layers tab, you can see here that I've got a group, and within that group is some text, and below that is a rectangle. And as I click and select different objects, you can see the window over in the inspector changing. And if I click on the top group, it's telling me things about that group now. Now you may have noticed there's nothing in the filters and behaviors tabs, no matter what is selected. This is because these are editing windows for behaviors or filters, and I haven't applied a behavior or a filter yet, so there won't be anything in there. If I hit F6 to open up the timing pane, you can see, if I just move the heads-up display over a bit, you can see it looks very similar to the Layers tab. The difference is that in this timing pane, I can do timing changes. For example, I could drag this rectangle along like that, and if I drag the playhead back, as I drag it along, it will appear when it sees it in the timeline. Apple Z for an undo, and then I'm going to hit F6 and F5 to close down both those windows. And that ends the lesson on an introduction to motion and its windows.